Good morning, everybody. I'll ask you to find your seats so we can go ahead and get started here. My name is Kristen Uresic-Scott of Uresic Label, and I am your education co-chair and also your SEPC treasurer. I wanted to take a minute to thank our sponsors for today. Our Session 2 sponsors are Bay Baby Produce, Borders Melons East, Classic Salads, Kings River Packing, Pure Flavor, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Our refreshment area sponsors are ACO Farms, Despre by WP Produce, Fowler Farms, National Mango Board, and Woodbridge Sales and Marketing. Let's give them a round of applause. We reviewed our antitrust reminder, but anybody who wants to reference, we have that on screen for you. Today is our moderator. We have Rick Stein of FMI, been with them since 2014. Rick is FMI's VP of Fresh, responsible for servicing members with formulating and executing fresh food strategies. Before being with FMI, Rick has over 40 years of experience at retail. As our data representative today, we have Anna Marie Roerink, founder and principal of 210 Analytics. Anna Marie works with retailers, growers, shippers, and trade associations to develop unique perspectives on the consumers. And I'll turn it over to Anna Marie and Rick, and then later they'll introduce our panelists.
All right, thank you so much, Kristen. And I remember saying last year, boy, it's good to be back in person, and this year it is amazing to be back in front of a full house. There's a few empty seats for those of you who are still coming in over there, since I have the eagle eye view from up here. But good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we have a lot of really fun and insightful information for you. So it is year 7 of the power of produce, and that means we have some wonderful trend lines that started really in very good economic years, took us through the whole 2 years of the pandemic, and we're able to see now how consumers are reacting relative to fresh produce and what they're doing in the midst of yet another very unusual year. So the way, for those of you who are not familiar with the power of produce, the way that formula works is we always look at the why and the what. And what I mean with that is we always start with asking consumers a million questions. 15 minutes long, we drill them on anything and everything regarding fresh produce. Where do they buy it? What do they buy? Why do they buy it? Do they buy organic? Do they buy value added? What do they consider local? What have you? But we also know that consumers are sometimes a bit aspirational in their responses, especially as it relates to things like organic and health and wellness. So we also make sure that we always overlay the information that we get from our survey with the real live numbers, and IRI has been our partner on that for many years. Also wanted to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors that have been with us for many years. The SEPC is one of them, Uresic Label, and InvaFresh as well. Now, the full report is quite the read because we make sure that we break out all that information by generations, by income, by regions, because we know not every generation or every income category buys produce the same way. So that's where you'll find all the detail. Today, we're going over some of the information because it would be a lot of time to go over all of it. So you see all the topics up here. We're picking out 4 or 5 of them today, and you'll be able to find the full report in the FMI store, and we'll give you more information on that after at the very last slide. So Rick, I'm going to hand it to you to introduce your panel.
Sure, and before I introduce the panel, I just want to acknowledge David and the SEPC group for partnering with FMI on allowing us to present our signature research here at this conference. You know, FMI does a lot of reports on the different commodities. We started with the power of meat, which Anne-Marie did, and when I joined FMI, I told Anne-Marie, I said, power of meat's great, but I said what the industry really needs is the power of produce. And in a short time, the power of produce is our most popular report. So I want to thank everyone for coming here. And David, thanks for being a visionary, understanding how valuable content like this is really appreciated by the conference attendees, as we can see by the audience out here. Let me start by introducing our distinguished guest today. To my left here is Jim Hancock, with Sam's Club. Jim's been with Sam's for over 26 years, lives in Bentonville with his wife Bridget and their 14-year-old twins, Carson and Kelsey. Next to Jim is Jerry Callahan from Albertsons Companies. Jerry has a 40-year career, so you get to be the senior guy at the table here, you know. And Jerry's a graduate of the University of Phoenix. He talks about his best friend for 39 years. Congratulations on that with Betty, your wife, and your son Ryan and Anne-Marie, and you have a granddaughter, Rue, and a grandson, Cam. And then the baby of the group is Robbie Cruz. I got to work with Robbie. I won't make any apologies for that. Robbie has over 28 years of retail experience, and Robbie, really enjoy your role here at Target now is kind of more recent, but you have a vast experience. I know we spent some time during our Safeway days, so thanks for joining us this morning. Let's have a round of applause for our guests.
All right, so what we're going to do this morning is what we've been doing for a few years, where I will play data geek, and I'm going to take you to a certain chunk of information, and then we'll pounce it back over to the panel to talk us through what their observations are with their industry hats on. So 2021, I earlier called it another unusual year. Of course, 2020 was an insane year where we saw some of the highest spikes we've ever seen in the history of grocery retailing. Now, produce wasn't quite as high as some of the other departments, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that the inflationary levels in produce in 2020 were not quite as high as other departments. So what you see, though, is if you look at the 5-year trend line, you absolutely see that 2020 still was an insane year for fruit and vegetables, and that we're actually still sitting in the plus for 2021 as well. So not only did we manage to grow over that insane year, so that's a really, really good accomplishment, but we also took back a little bit of that perimeter share that we had lost. One of the very strong departments in 2020 was meat. It still is, but produce is starting to get back. And of course, produce has a little bit more competition from frozen and canned as well. So in that regard, looking at these numbers, they are incredibly strong. But at the same time, we are getting a nice big boost from inflation right now when you look at the dollar numbers. So the two lines that you're seeing, the darker line is the dollar growth, the lighter line is volume. If you look throughout 2020, you see that they trended very, very close together, so there was very little inflation. If you look at 21, you see those lines getting further and further apart. And that's really the same situation that we're still dealing with today. I just ran the numbers for February, and we're looking at some 13% inflation right now, year over year for fruit. Veg is a little bit less, and that's why you're now seeing that fruit is far outpacing the growth in vegetables, and it has a lot to do with what did the route to growth look like because of the 2020 pandemic. Are you able to deliver the demand coming out of the stores? And this is a big problem for some commodities and some departments where you can't even fill the orders that are coming in. And then, of course, the third piece is that inflation deflation. So if you look at fruit versus veg, you're absolutely seeing that strength in fruit this year, but keep in mind it didn't have as good of a year in 2020. But it also has a lot to do with inflation. If you go all the way to the right of your screen, you see that inflation over 2021 in fruit was 7%, whereas for veg it was only 4%. But even so, we do see actual growth in fruit, where there is an increase in units, an increase in volume. So it's definitely not all related to inflation, and that's an important lesson. Now, if we go behind the what drove the growth, there's always what I call the 3 levers of growth, right? You can get more people to buy it, you can get them to buy it more often, and you can get them to spend a little bit more. Well, if you look at those 3 levers, we did well in the spend per trip, and that, of course, has everything to do with inflation. If you look at the actual number of units in the basket, we are seeing people offset this level of inflation by buying a little bit less, and that's what's causing a lot of that volume. They're walking out the door spending the same amount of money, but they're buying a little bit less. We did not hold on to all those trips that we gained in 2020, and that's something we really need to work on. What can we do to keep driving people to that fresh produce department? Is it secondary displays? What is it that we can do to keep driving trips? And household penetration, that's down just a tiny little smidge. I'm personally not too worried about that. If you think about 2020, there were no farmers markets open. A lot of the road stands were gone. So that's not measured in these numbers. So all in all, we have a very, very high household penetration. The pandemic powerhouses of 2021, these are just commodities that are doing an unbelievable job. And the two I really want to call out are berries and salad kits. Those were powerhouses in 2020, and yet they have enormous growth in 2021 as well. And it really speaks to some of the trends that we'll be talking about today, which is convenience and health and wellness. The other two that are highlighted, mixed fruit and pineapples, are interesting as well. They did not do well in 2020. Why is that? A lot of those are value added, they're for on the go, they're for entertaining, and both on the go and entertaining are back with a vengeance in 2020, and I predict that they will be big trends in 2022 as well. Real quick look at organic versus conventional. For years, we've been seeing organic outgrow conventional, and that continued throughout the pandemic. So as you can see, organic had an increase in pounds, an increase in dollars, whereas conventional couldn't quite keep up. But this is one of those areas where it's like, who pays the bills? That's conventional. And who can help you drive growth? Because 2022, as we all know, will have to be a year to look for the pockets of growth. It is gonna be hard to beat 2020 and 2021. So organic certainly seems to be one of those pockets. There we go. Signals for growth are also absolutely there. We always ask people in the survey, do you think you're going to continue to buy organic? And as you can see, for the most part, people say, no, probably not. But we do, or probably the same at 55%. And then we have about 33% who said, yeah, I actually think I'm going to buy more this year. Now, this survey was done in October. We've since seen a lot of inflation. And oftentimes during inflation, what we're seeing is that organic tends to plateau a little bit, but these numbers in my mind are very positive, and I'll tell you why. You see that core number at 68%. What that means is people who look for organic anytime, any fruit, any veg they can find, 68% of those people think that they will be buying more. And these are the truly converted organic shoppers. They truly believe in organic. So they will make room in their budget to continue to buy organic. So I think it's still going to be a pocket of growth. But at the same time, it wouldn't hurt for us to educate people on the benefits of organic. When you ask a consumer, it's always about health. I think organic is better for me from a nutritional point of view. But hardly ever do you hear consumers talk about it's better for the soil, it's better for the planet, or all these other reasons that we as an industry know about. So here you see some great examples by Central Market just talking about the facts behind, in this case, organic bananas. So that's something that I think we'll have to start doing a little bit more of. I have, oh, there we go. I was going to say, my clicker is not working very well. And now I am way ahead. Hold on 1 second, Rick. There we go. One quick other thing relative to local and other claims that we're seeing out in the marketplace. Local is still very, very hot. We're seeing that to be the top claim in terms of what people want to see more of. That claim is really driven by some of the older generations, Gen X and Boomers. Younger generations are really focused on organic, value-added, non-GMO, those types of claims. But all in all, I think these are going to be big areas for growth. The next slide is the panel slide, so Rick, take it away, and I'll try to get to it.
Great, great. So I think I'll start my first question with you, Robbie. So we saw a decrease in produce trips across all channels. And, you know, Target is a mega store. You know, your mass market. You have a lot of non-foods, non-perishables. What does Target do to try and encourage that produce visit?
Yeah, at Target, food and bev plays a really big role. But what's really important is we have this multi-category segment with us. And so as we think about seasonal moments for the guests, and as you think about like a birthday party, we're allowed the guests to be able to go buy a gift, and then they could also buy paper plates and buy wrapping paper. But then, like, how do we also get them to buy the cake, and then how we get them to buy like a fruit or vegetable platter? Or if it's a family home game night, a lot of families now are eating more at home, and so We allow them to be able to go pick up the latest game that's over within Target. And then also maybe they're going to buy some spaghetti and then buy some salads and buy some tomatoes. And so that's what we're really looking at Target is building on these seasonal moments. And in actuality, 70% of all Target guests buy food and bev, and that continues to grow as we look at that. And then what we say at Target is we celebrate food rather than just sell it. And so how do we celebrate those seasonal moments with the guests and help them make some of those decisions to buy that entire basket?
Thanks. You know, Jerry, claims really seem to be resonating with consumers, and local is really resonating. What are your banners doing to highlight local?
Well, you think about local, first you've got an understanding in Albertsons, we've got 2,250 stores really from coast to coast. So we're a huge company, but we operate 14 smaller areas, right? That's kind of our unique distinction in our company. So each banner operates really separately so we can show off local. Some examples of that, we've got our United folks in today, right? And they go after Hatch Chili, and not just Hatch Chili, but Young Gun Hatch Chili. And that local is fresh throughout the whole store. You can find it in hamburgers. They'll have 100 different items. That's just one example. In Idaho, we had an Idaho event this year that was just spectacular, coming from the farmers right down the road, and we went out on the sidewalks and we can tell that story and actually have farmers come in and talk to the customers. So there's lots of ways. Last one, Hagen's up in the Northwest. You talk about local, they've got it within 3 or 4 miles, and they have, you go through their department during local season and you'll see no less than 30 to 40 local farmer signs, pictures of the farms and what they're doing.
That's great. That's great. Hey, Jim, we saw that berries and salad kits really had this tremendous growth. What is your organization doing in those two categories?
Yeah, I mean, consumers, members, definitely after berries, salad kits. I think the big thing for us is, number one, making sure the quality is right. We're aligned with the right people so that members want to come back and keep buying those things, and assortment's right, specifically on the salad kits. There's an opportunity there to get creative and create some excitement. So that's probably the two biggest things that are the foundation. Outside of that is just the space that we're dedicating for those items. And we've got almost 600 Sam's Clubs in the U.S. and Puerto Rico, and we're really going through this pretty big investment to expand refrigeration so we have more holding power for those key items that are growing. We want to be able to drop the pallet, put it up high, watch it sell down throughout the day. A few touches, let the members do the work, and making room for it.
As an old retailer, stack it high and watch it fly resonates, right? Jerry, organic had a really good year. And Anne-Marie kind of said that could be an opportunity for future growth. But I'm also thinking of the economic pressures that are out there now, with inflation and everything. How do you view organic? Do you think that the customer is going to continue to pay that differential, or what do you expect?
I do. I think it'll continue at today's growth pace, and it's absolutely been spectacular. And here's why I think that. So you think about the cost and the retail gap between conventional and organic continues to close, right? And at the same time, quality continues to get better. You look at leaf lettuce from some of our suppliers, and I won't name who they are, but their green leaf is every bit, if not better, than conventional. So the quality's improving, and the cost gap is really getting close. So, and just another thought on that. The approach on organic, or the approach we take on organic, and I tell my team this, is stop treating it like it's special. And I think we have to do that, right? Yeah. Promote it when it's right, when the season's right. Don't promote it when it's not right. Make sure that are we duplicating things? So I'll give you one example. We can carry 2 parsleys, a conventional or an organic, right? Who cares? Carry the organic. The quality's just as good, and we can sell more organic at the same time. So I think it's going to continue to grow at today's pace.
And the other thing that Anne-Marie brought up is that it's really resonating with the Gen Z and the millennials, which is the growth, future growth. So I think that's interesting too. Yeah. Let me ask you one other question, Jim, about volume. The report showed that overall volume was down. Does that surprise you? And if so, why?
I don't know if it's surprising in that in 2020, a lot of the population was at home. I mean, working from home, schooling from home. So you think about that, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between. That's a lot of consumption at home. 2021, people started to get back out again. So in that regard, it's not terribly surprising. It's a little disappointing, talking about the health and wellness aspect of it, and we're trying to grow consumption. People are pretty aware of their immune system and how to keep it strong now after what we've just been through. So from that standpoint, it's a little disappointing that their volume took a little bit of a dip. But in terms of like retail taking a dip, the fact that people are back out again and restaurants are open again, I mean, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, the report showed a little bit of how farmers markets are playing. That doesn't play into the data, so you don't capture that in volume. And I'm just convinced myself that people are eating more fruits and vegetables. We're just not getting it tracked at retail. So it could be an opportunity for retail. Anne-Marie?
All right, here we go. Let's talk a little bit about that consumption, because I think you're absolutely right. Hey, AV guys, I keep having issues with the clicker in case you have a spare one sitting around. So let's talk a little bit about consumption. And I will tell you, this is the one question that Rick and I always just watch. We can't wait for the data to come out. And this is a question we've been asking for 7 years, and that is, how often in a typical week do you eat fresh produce, fruit and veg? Now, only 4% of the population said, you know what, in a typical week, I have to admit that's never. We discontinued those folks from the survey after this question. But 4 to 5 days a week and 6+ days a week, those numbers, guys, have been declining now year over year over year. And what we're seeing, and especially in 2020, and we continue to see that trend today, is that when people go to the store, and they're not going as often as they did before, they buy fresh produce for the first couple of days, but then seamlessly switch over to frozen and other solutions for the rest of the week. Whereas older generations will come back to the store on Wednesday, restock up on produce, and have that whole second part of the week covered. So it is very important, I think, that we talk about the freshness of our produce, that we teach people about which items you buy for shelf life, which items are not going to last as long. This is where a lot of the packaging solutions come in as well. But we're definitely seeing a little bit of pressure on the number of times people eat fresh produce in those high frequencies. But the aspirations are very high, and I think that's very important because it's a lot easier to work with a people who wants to eat a lot of produce than a person who really does not want to eat a lot of fresh produce. So the aspirations of what meal occasions do you want to eat more fruit and vegetables are very high. But there are also, I think, some really interesting clues. For instance, let's look at that snack one. You see that a lot of people want to include fruit for snacks, but vegetables is a good 20 points lower. And yet there have been so many solutions out in the marketplace on the veg side that address snacking. Make sure consumers are aware of that. Same for breakfast. That's really where you see fruit shine. What are some vegetables that we can bring in on the vegetable side, on the breakfast side? So there's many, I think, occasions where helping to ideate with people might help us to integrate it a little bit more often. I was at the airport a couple of weeks ago, and I saw this board at Payway. What do? They have a little line on their menu that says, add extra house-cut veg, $1.99. $2 for an extra portion of veg. Can you imagine the margin on that? But those are the kinds of things that we need to do in retail as well. Think about using vegetables in different ways. So just talking about the fact that you can use leafy greens in many different ways can be one of those examples. Here you're seeing the fact that really only one product in the entire store can be the veg, can be the protein, and can be the carb. Only vegetables can do that. And there is a lot of consumer recognition on that. We see that about 67% of people use fresh vegetables to at least on occasion replace traditional carbs like pasta or rice. At the same time, we see 73%, so very similar numbers, occasionally use a true plant-based protein to replace meat or poultry. When we asked about what kinds are those, you see mostly that leaning towards beans and peas, and I bet you a lot of that comes out of center store, not out of the fresh produce department. You see some recognition for leafy greens, seeds and nuts, and then mushrooms. So these are the kinds of things where we need to educate people a little bit more, because plant-based meat alternatives, there is really not any true vegetables or fruits in there, and yet they're really getting that plant-based message. And I think there's many opportunities for the produce department to play in that protein space as well. And that is an important lesson because people do want to integrate produce more. They have high aspirations, and what do they say is the number one way? Well, make it cheaper for me. Good prices will get me to buy more. And we're going to continue to see that good prices come back all throughout the presentation today. But there's many other kinds as well. We see convenience coming back in some of these areas, and we see delight me coming back in some of these areas where they say frequently introduce me to new stuff. And that was really a key lesson from prior to the pandemic. People don't want to eat the same thing again and again. Prior to the pandemic, if they were sick and tired of what they cooked at home, they would go to a restaurant. Now we have the opportunity to push that experimentation and really give people opportunity to create something different at home. The other one really that we need to talk about is the health halo. For years, we've banked on the fact that everybody knows produce is healthy. But there's now different ways, and one of you guys brought it up, the fact that immunity plays a much bigger role. We have an aging population, which means more people are dealing with higher blood pressure and heart disease. All these things can be addressed through a lot of the different fruit and vegetables we sell today. And those are some recognitions that are available, throughout the population, but not quite to the extent of the knowledge people used to have. In fact, that's actually a question we asked this year, and that was, are there any fruits or vegetables that you buy specifically because they deliver a certain health benefit? 59% is a nice number, but I personally believe that number should be a whole lot higher. And when we ask, well, what is it that you buy because of specific benefits? You see the good old, commodities like bananas for potassium. You see apple. I literally had a lot of people write in the survey, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So those wisdoms are still there, and here you see some of them, and people referring to the fact that they buy bananas for potassium, they buy anything with a low glycemic index. That's probably your more educated shopper. Then there was a person who wrote apples for fiber, mandarins for vitamin C, spinach as a source of iron. But what if people were to realize that mushrooms are a source of protein, or leafy greens can bring protein or fiber, or berries can still be good in a low-carb diet? I think if we create more of those common wisdoms back out in the marketplace, we're going to see more people buy food for the medicine, as they like to say. So there's a wide interest in knowing more. Health benefits, 66% of consumers say, I want to know more about the health benefits of specific fruit and vegetables. Here you see a great example on a mushroom package talking about that it's protein rich. 63% said, I would like to know what the actual recommended daily amount is. What it means is, if I go to Subway and I put some of the little cut lettuce on my sandwich, is that a serving? Is that not a serving? What is a serving of fruit and vegetables? So make it easy for them and figure out a way so they can really keep track of daily amount versus my actual reality. 60% said nutritional content, I want to know about the specific fruit and vegetables, and I saw a lot of vitamin C stations pop up throughout the last 2 years, which was fantastic. A lot more areas of opportunity. The low-carb diets are still here, and that means a lot of people are looking for high protein, low sugar. And if you talk to those people, a lot of them say, oh, I can't eat fruit. That's too much sugar. But there's still a lot of the berries that are very low in the glycemic index and do fit in a low-carb diet. So these are the things we need to educate about. Another huge opportunity in my mind is all those air fryers and Instant Pots and all those new ways of cooking and educating people where fresh fruit and vegetables fit in on that. So Rick, over to you.
Okay, I think I'll start with you, Jerry. I think on every report we do, whether it's meat, produce, food service, consumers say they want more information. They want to be educated. And so what do you think is the best way, what platform do you think is the best way to provide health and nutrition information when it comes to the produce department?
Yeah, I wanted to say internet, but really, reality is it's at the point of sale. So, thinking about this question, in my mind, you always have to challenge yourself. Honestly, the entire room, we can do a better job. I don't know that we're doing a good job telling our story. I think we do okay on package, but we're not even screaming it on package when you start walking the produce department. So I think, you know, if you're a supplier out there, I think you have an opportunity to, let's start telling that story on the package. In the store and bulk, you know, that's really what I would control. We're not doing a great job. So versus giving you the answer, I think about the things that we can do and challenge ourselves. So you think about what you can do. I think there's something with QR codes on the shelf next to the item. You know, during COVID, we were all trained that we can't touch a menu, right? But you can do a QR code. So I think QR codes, you know, people didn't grab on, they're going to grab on today. So there's an opportunity there. I think in our app, you know, we've done some okay things, but there's opportunities to tell the story there. And then I think the pharmacy is key. Yep. And I mean, I'd love to walk through the pharmacy and see nothing but fresh produce signs, and that may happen, you never know, right? And then in-store signing overall just to tell the story. I think we have to do, the message is we have to do a better job than we can.
I think that's great. The fact you brought up pharmacy, it reminded me there was one chain that was actually writing produce prescriptions out of their pharmacy. So there you go. Your idea's already been stolen. Yeah. Hey, let me move over to you, Jim. So we're, you know, one of the things I think about, I keep asking what is retailer doing? We know that we can improve volume and sales if we create more eating occasions. What would you want to see from the growers and shippers in terms of innovation around breakfast, lunch, snacks, where you can add occasions? So this is your chance to tell your partners what you want them to do.
Well, Jerry may have touched on it, and already indirectly several of us have, but I think from the snacking occasion for sure, the fruits, we're trying to get our kids to substitute the package of crackers or cookies that's in the pantry for something healthy. And how do we tell that story about to the parents that you know that this is a great alternative, and we have to make the fruit. We have to buy fruit that tastes good enough for kids to want to do that, and adults too. I think that's the big focus. I think snacking's the biggest opportunity. I think there's also opportunities just in marketing with like lifestyle shots to be able to show different pairings with veg that maybe people don't think of on an average meal. So I think those are some of the opportunities.
You know, Robbie, I'm going to go back to this education. You know, we know that the consumers are looking for this information, but what knowledge list is pretty limited to most shoppers. You know, is there value in educating across more fruits and vegetables to expand the knowledge and then expand the items bought for nutritional benefits?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the same trends. When we recently launched a plant-based line with our Good and Gather brand, which is now over $2 billion a year on that. And I think what we need to do is working together on what does that look like in the future? How do we continue to ideate and innovate and bring that platform to the guest and helping them understand what are some of these functional benefits that we can get out of there? If you look in the healthy snacking and the juice category, there's a lot with immunity that a couple of us talked about, but then you think about what does ginger do for you, or turmeric, or ashwagandha, and acerola. Like there's so many health and functional benefits that are out there, prebiotics, probiotics. I think what we need to do a better job of is helping the guests understand what does that do for your diet, and how do we continue to use fruits and vegetables versus anything else that we can help them stay healthy. But it's that education as I think where we have an opportunity as an industry.
You know, Anne-Marie was saying every year we look at the report, there's certain things that pop out to her and I that kind of alarming. And this idea that people in 2017, I think it was 66%, said they were eating produce 4 or more days a week. And that number went all the way down to 54%, which I think is very concerning. And anyone who wants to weigh in on this, with all the emphasis on produce and health and well-being, you know, what do you think is causing this? And now that you know this, how can you use this information within your organization to maybe change it? Anyone want to? Jerry?
I'd love to chime in. You know what I think is causing it? First of all, it's busy lifestyle and the fact that fast food continues to grow, right? Up 2.2% year-over-year basis since, 10 years back. So there's more fast food, and that's, in my mind, sometimes our competition. So, when you think about it, I think how we address it is healthy snacking. We've got great options in the stores. I think we've got expand that, and we're actually doing that in some of our ready-to-eat meals. We just rolled out this new meal solution. It's in about 350 stores, and it'll be in all of our stores soon. And it's just an easy way. You're ready to eat, ready to heat, and ready to cook. And they're meals that include proteins and include produce that are easy. So I think we have to hit the easy button, like fast food, but we got to give them good food.
I think I would say something similar to what Jerry touched on. Lives are just busier. Like when I played baseball, we had practice twice a week. Now your kids play baseball, they practice every single day, right? And so you have to find ways to be able to get fruits and vegetables on the go. And so a lot of that healthy snacking, the juices, but I think, again, it's more snacking occasions versus sit-down meals because they just don't have that time for it. And so how do we help the parents be able to give them a healthy option while they're in the car going from dance class to going over to soccer to whatever they're maybe doing for that night? But we've kind of, over the years, have just made our lives way too busy, and we just don't have the time to be able to sit down and do some of that.
Any thoughts, Jim?
I think they did a good job.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the report is information like that. Both of you kind of talked about how you could use that information to implement some strategy to kind of combat it. So thanks. Anne-Marie?
And we're going to see a lot of those value-added and convenience themes coming back. So let's talk a little bit about the purchase decision. As I mentioned, price plays a role again and again and again throughout this report. First, we saw that price really is something where it will drive people to buy more. When you look at what is the purchase decision, you see that be hand in hand. If you just look at the first rank, so the numbers in green, you see price, appearance, which is really the consumer's definition of quality, if you will, health benefits, and ripeness. But if you add the number 3, so they could only pick 3 items to rank them 1 and 3, you see that really ripeness and price are hand in hand, that number 1. So price is very important, but there are other ways in which we can entice them, and that's always important to keep in mind. At some point, this inflation will ease, and then we gotta make sure that the stories of old still resonate with people as well. But there's absolutely great inflation knowledge out in the marketplace. Back in October when we did the survey, 82% of consumers said, yep, I've noticed higher fresh produce prices. We just reran that number in January. It's up to 92% are aware. 91% of those are concerned about it. And there's a lot of reactions that people are taking in response. In fact, there's only about a third of people that have not made changes, but how long will that be? So if you look at some of those changes, you can see where the volume pressure is coming from. Because if you look at the ones that have that little arrow down, you see 31% buying less, 27% buying more frozen, 22 going to a different store, and 22 buying more canned. All of that puts pressure on our fresh produce. So what do we do in return? At the same time, we see the consumers have an enormous focus on promotions. 54% of them check promotions at the store where they tend to buy produce. That's up from 47%, so quite a nice significant uptick. We also have 27% that check prices across stores. They're more willing to go to different outlets. So that whole promotional view is very important. Where they're looking for promotional information is changing very, very rapidly. If we go back just 10 years ago, it was all about the paper circular. That's why you always saw fresh produce on the front of the paper circular, because that was one of the biggest traffic drivers for the store, still is. But consumers don't look at the printed circular all that much anymore. It's really about the in-store signage. It's really about apps, and all the digital ones you can see increase. So I love your point about we need to increase more on signage, but at the same time, we need signage for promotions, and before we know it, we start looking like NASCAR, and the visual beauty of produce is gone. So this is a very hard thing to think through. But encouraging digital engagement, I think that's a really, really important one. You see 3 different stores doing it, just encouraging people to download the app, encouraging people to use QR codes that are back with a vengeance. All throughout the new Hy-Vees, you see those H with the QR code. You just hold your phone up to it, and all that week special starts scrolling through. So some great ways to get people more engaged with the digital numbers. But at the same time, as much as people are looking for promotions, there aren't as many to be found, nor are promotions as deep, as aggressive as they used to be, because we're all still dealing with the high demand and supply chain challenges. So if you look at the number of pounds sold on promotion in 21 versus pre-pandemic, we're down a good 20% for fruit. We're down a good 34% for vegetables. So people are looking, we're just not giving it to them so often. So what are ways in which we can be more creative? Could it be a mix and match promotion? Could it be a one-day sale? What are ways in which we can take a little bit of pressure off the supply chain, but still offer those promotions that people are looking for? At the same time, we see people be much more plan and list driven, which is one of the big things that came out of the Great Recession. People learned that oftentimes they bought too much and threw it away. So one of the last measures they took back then was saving by buying less. And we see that measure reemerge very, very quickly now. So if we ever wondered if those lessons from the Great Recession stuck, they absolutely did. And that means we have to wow them a little bit more in store. So what can we do to prompt them to make unplanned purchases? Well, number one is items in season. People love that idea of seasonality. So what can we bring to life in those regards? Other ways are a good deal. Here it is again. It comes back to price again. But also, eye-catching displays is very, very powerful. Nothing in the store is as beautiful as fruit and veg. I got this middle picture out of Morocco, and it was Saturday night, 10 p.m., and I sent it to Joe Watson at PMA, and we geeked back and forth over this gorgeous olive display. And you know, if we do that on a Saturday evening, imagine what it would do to consumers in the store walking by something like this. So wowing people in the store is incredibly important. Recipes can be a great way to inspire, but certainly our supply chain issues are on the radar of the shopper as well. About 60% notice more out of stock, less variety, and again, they're making changes because of it, and again, some of those changes affect our volume. We might lose people to the produce, or to other produce departments, etc. So Rick, over to you.
So I'll start with you, Jim. You know, I say the things that keep surprising us in the report, and I remember we've been doing the Power of Meat for over 14 years, and from the first day we did the Power of Meat, the number one thing on the decision tree for the consumer was price. And what was cool when we started doing the Power of Produce is they said quality and appearance, which really sent a great message to our retailers about building beautiful displays and making sure it's fresh and culling and things like that. So now price has come up in this last year as number one. So my question to you, Jim, is do you think this is a temporary phenomenon? Or do you think it's going to stay? And if it stays, how would you try to think about this in terms of your promotional strategies?
Yeah. So I do think it depends on your customer, like who is your target customer. And if you cater to someone who's more price sensitive and a gallon of gas is getting close to $5, you know, meat's going up, you know, produce is going up, then price has to be number one because their budget didn't go up. They're still, you know, I got $50 a week to spend on groceries, and that's what it's going to be. And so I think for a lot of people, a lot of Americans, price will be number one. But there's another group that quality is still the winner. And I think in the retail environment, the folks that are going to win are the ones that can do both, deliver on the quality and the price. Obviously, in stock is just a non-negotiable, has to happen. So I think that's the key is like together, it's not as a group, retail, growers, shippers, what can we do to keep price in a way that they're not having to choose to put one less produce item in the basket is important. And I know there's a lot of pressures fighting all of us right now that are making that difficult, but that is the challenge.
You know, Robbie, there's diverse customers using all different kinds of platforms to make their decisions. How is Target looking at omni-channel, and how are they trying to incorporate fresh and produce into omni-channel?
Yeah, there's no doubt the guest is telling us, you know, speed and convenience, right? So that's either we're delivering it to your home, you could drive up, or you could do pickup. But you have to give the guests their options and meet what their needs are for that day or for next week or for next month. As we think about our guest, the guest isn't just shopping on one platform versus the other. They're cross-shopping, and so when they are in our stores, we have to continue to give them that surprise and delight and give them that best at-home eating experience, because that's that experience they're going to remember when they order that online. And then as I think about this, the content on the platform, it can't just be price and item. It has to be, how do we educate them on different recipes, and how do we give them maybe some of the functional benefits that are out there, or how do we help them understand how to prepare some of those things? I think that's how you take the digital platform to the next level versus just being price and item.
Yeah. You know, Jerry, based on that, customers are using all kinds of apps, social media, email strategies, text, all these things that are digitally performed. Do you see this continuing, and would you see this as just trying to communicate price and promotion, or do you think you can expand that?
Oh, I think it's going to continue and it's going to escalate. I mean, it's just growing, right, exponentially. I think it's a great opportunity to talk to our customer. We see the engagement, escalating. Today we're using it for promotions, and we're also using it for weekly shoppers, right? It's an opportunity to talk to our customers. So you think a few of the tools that we're using today, Just For You has been just an incredible Just For You opportunities in our ads and on our app. We're actually doing one-day sales that are helping drive produce consumption. Jewel will do a one-day or even a 1-hour sale, and you better get to the store now and with unbelievable prices. So that's helping. I think about QR codes and even connecting growers. I think we can talk to the growers through our digital apps. In fact, we did something with cherries. I think it might have been Sage or somebody who filmed cherries actually harvesting and going through and telling the whole story right to the cup, right? So, maybe we don't have to give everything away, but we tell the story and all the care that goes into produce. So, yeah, the short answer is yes, and it's going to get bigger.
I'm going to throw a question out for anyone you want to jump in. So we saw customers starting to become, they were at home, they were eating, they were watching everything they were throwing away. And this idea that customers are really concerned about food waste, has risen. How do you communicate the importance of how to keep produce, shelf life, all the tips? How do you guys approach that with your customers to help them extend the life of their produce?
I think just teaching a customer that berries need to be under refrigeration, right? Every hour out of refrigeration is a day loss on berries. And so how we treat our product in store really tells, it's interesting, I had a customer tell me that, I keep berries in refrigeration because you keep berries in refrigeration. I don't put tomatoes in refrigeration because you guys don't store them in refrigeration. So I think our action at store level will help teach the consumers what to do. When you're throwing something away, all you're doing is it's a negative thought in your mind. Next time you go to the grocery store, I may not get that sale. So it's important to teach our consumers, how to treat the product.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I've got an unfair advantage. Everything we sell is packaged, so we just put it right on the package, keep refrigerated, store in a cool place.
You can actually put it right on the package. That's great. All right, Anne-Marie?
All right, back to me. So a little bit more about, we talked about produce decisions, the purchase decision. Let's talk a little bit more about where they purchase. And Rick, you alluded to it, that we do have a lot of dollars escaping to farmers markets and roadside produce stands. And if you think about 2020, a lot of those farmers markets were closed, or you had to go online and get an appointment, and you would get a certain time to which you could go to the farmers markets, which I think is another reason that we didn't compete with them as much in 2020 as we did with 2021. Altogether, though, we really see that 89% of consumers buy the fresh produce in the store where they buy the majority of the groceries. So you could say that produce follows the majority of the grocery purchase, but I really think it's the other way around. Because when you talk to a lot of consumers and you say, more than likely you have 2, 3, 4 grocery stores directly around you, where you live or where you work, how do you pick one over the other? Produce and meat are always number 1 and 2. Now, during times like this, price really starts to come up as well, and it tends to be price, produce, and meat. But in other words, it's not necessarily produce following the grocery trip as it so much is produce driving the grocery trip, and that's always something important to keep in mind. But we do have leaking dollars, as we call it. We see farmers markets, roadside stands, dollar stores is starting to become big. A lot of the Dollar Generals are starting to be converted to have those base produce needs as well as they're picking up some of the center store purchases. We see a lot of farm direct. We talked about that a lot in the fall session, as well as the whole idea of delivery boxes, et cetera. In other words, your competition today, if you're a retailer, is so different from when it was just 10 or 15 years ago. There we go. So why farmers markets? Because that, as we saw, is our biggest competition to where a lot of it leaks. Well, this is a picture I took at my farmers markets, and I don't know if the little quotation marks were there on purpose, but clearly this is not farm fresh, as you see the stickers all over the produce. And that's how a lot of farmers markets are. I love taking friends to a farmers markets and see them wow over the produce and talk to the farmer. And I'm like, have you noticed those little stickers on there? Yeah. Enough said, as they say. But why do people love farmers markets? It's freshness, it's better quality, they think. It's nice to show support for local farmers. So as we are merchandising in our store, I think these are things that we can all equal or even do better than a lot of these farmers markets. It's just that they have the romanticized view of them, whereas we are seen as the corporation, right? So this is, I think, something where we can steal some of their thunder. Online has been a big story in 2020, continue to be a big story in 21. We did not necessarily see more people buy online. That experimentation has kind of dwindled to a stop, but we do see a lot of people who were buying online add more and more produce items. Initially, it was truly about center store and frozen. Produce and meat are starting to become into that basket a little bit more often. And the other big change that we're seeing is the purchase frequency online. Now, altogether, the number of people who exclusively buy online is low single digits. But we do see the purchase frequency going up, which means there's all the much more pressure to make sure people are comfortable to buy fresh produce online as well. Altogether, we see about 46-ish, just below half of people who buy online, but we do see certain groups be much more likely to buy online than others. We see the two coasts be much more likely to have online shopping, urban areas, therefore a lot of young shoppers. More than anything, we talked about it, Robbie, I can tell that you experience that pressure on time, because the biggest reasons to buy online is really saving time. And that is something very important to keep in mind. Sometimes you see advertisements from Walmart right as you go to order. You can save X many minutes by ordering online versus coming to the store type of thing. So the idea of children at the home, that really is a huge point where people start to order online just to simply save time. But not all produce baskets that people buy in the store end up in that online basket as well. There's a lot of people who will pick and choose what they are willing to purchase in an online basket, and we have ways to overcome those hesitations. They say, really train the people who select my produce. Have the ability to indicate ripeness. In other words, if I have my stuff delivered today and I want to use the avocados for tacos tonight, I want to be able to say I need ripe avocados versus I need avocados that I can use later in the week. So the ability to include ripeness in the order, that is a big one. Money back guarantees, people always click it, never really hold us back to it. Selection by produce associates, in other words, I trust my produce guy, can he be the one to also pick it? So there are ways to get people to include more items in the online baskets. What also really matters is promotions. Whether you're in the store or online, it matters. Looking for seasonal items, that's where I think we have a big opportunity. Online baskets are very routine driven. I start with what I bought in the past and then I just click, yes, I need that too. So don't forget about your new items, your seasonal items. We got to work a little harder to get those into the baskets as well. So here's an example. How do you translate that new little sticker or that display that you have in the front of the store when it's cherry season? How do you translate that? Have a section in your area that talks about what's new. Or the idea of seasons, right, where we put everything together because it's Cinco de Mayo. Well, you can do that online actually a whole lot easier because you don't need all that store labor to create these online, like cross-merchandising displays, if you will. So these are big opportunities where we can be in those online baskets a little bit more often. Rick, over to you.
Okay, I'll start with you, Robbie. So 2021 clearly saw more online frequency. Is that being reflected in what you're seeing in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. We had, if you look at same-day services, we were up 45% last year versus the previous year, which was all triple digits. And really, it's just, again, it's meeting that guest needs. And so in 80% of our stores, you could actually get drive-up or delivered adult beverages. So not as if you would ever partake in adult beverage, but if you decided to, you can come by and be able to pick it up for in most of our stores. And then recently, we just announced that you're gonna be able to come to our stores, and we will deliver your Starbucks out to you on Drive Up. And so if you think about going to Starbucks, and we're gonna be able to bring out with your food and bev items, with whatever else you ordered at Target, we're gonna be able to bring your latte. We're testing out being able to do returns through Drive Up, which anyone who's had little kids and you think about just saving time, and I could just think about when my kids were sleeping in the car, the last thing I wanted to do was wake them up. And so now that we're trying to meet the guest needs and make it as easy as possible for them, and so this Drive Up thing that we got going has been a tremendous help for us.
Hey, Jerry, so we see Farm Direct, like the farmers markets, produce stands, produce boxes. This is where the report shows we're losing most of the dollars from retail produce. What are some of the ways you're incorporating these farm fresh elements in your operations?
You know, I tell you, it's just about storytelling, and we're doing a lot more of that. So I'll give you a couple examples. In SoCal, we just started a program where we're working with 3 to 5 farmers every period to actually film where our product comes from. So when you walk into a display, and it'll be on the feature display, there'll be a QR code with a picture of the farmer on there, and then you can go direct to the farm. You know, you think about a farmer display, and you know, it came from the farm. Well, guess what? All of our product did too. So you know, we have it right there. We just got to tell the story. You know, you've probably seen a lot of TVs being added to our stores. I think that visual method and actually, you know, featuring farmers on there is just helping our customers understand that, you know, we're buying, you know, as well. You think about California. I think we got 550 stores. I bet we buy more local produce in California than anybody. But how do you tell that story, right? Yeah. So unless it's on the building, like it was at Sprouts Farmers Market, and I'd love to steal Farmers Market, right? But I can't. It's taken. You know, what do you do? So.
You know, Jim, I remember when I was at retail, part of my career was in the Washington, D.C. market. And if we rejected a load, I could go down within 2 days to the farmer's market, and I'd see the stuff that we were, you know, that didn't meet our quality control, but they were selling it at the farmer's market. So with these consumers gravitating towards farmers markets, what are some of the ways we can convince them that your location is as fresh and better than the farmer's market?
Yeah. I mean, I think farmers market, it's growing because it's a fun thing to do on Saturday. You go down there with your family and you walk around and you get to see all kinds of cool local stuff, not just fruits and veggies. But it doesn't replace the produce trip. Like, they don't offer the full assortment. They're not part of the pantry load. So I think the thing that we still have to just continue to do is, like, deliver on quality, deliver on price, deliver on freshness, and I think that's how we win. That's how we compete.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we see that promotions, suggestions, and seasonal new items are the key to online purchases. How do you incorporate that into your app and your website platforms? Any of you?
You know, I think on the app, it's just storytelling, right? We have a great opportunity. I mean, there's 4 or 5 or 6 ways you can get your information to get today. So, you know, I think that we have to take that opportunity to tell our story. We also have to tell the story that around farmers market and things that they don't do, right? You're not going to get fresh cut fruit, you know, ready to go in a farmer's market necessarily, right? So, you know, there's that opportunity.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
So, I had one. It was related to telling the story about seasonal items arriving in club and store, and she mentioned it with My wife now, like, the canned order's there every week, every 2 weeks, and Anne Marie mentioned it, she'll tailor it a little bit based on what we actually need. But a few months ago, we went and walked through the club together, and she's like, I didn't know you had that, and I didn't know you had that. And I was like, I know, you haven't been in here in 6 months. And so it is a challenge, and we have to do things like through the app, whether it's push notifications or emails, to let consumers know that the new items arrived, the seasonal items in store, in club, come grab it, or otherwise they're not going to know because it's on the repeat. They're just working off that repeat order and tailoring it a little bit based on what their menus are for the week at home. So as more and more people go omni and digital, it's going to become a bigger challenge that we have to let folks know what's new in club this week.
Yeah, and I think there's also an opportunity in digital to do that affinity suggestion. You know, if you see they're buying stew beef, you know, do you need carrots? Do you need, where you can almost do an Amazon kind of thinking where you suggest items to them. I think that's going to be coming as well. Anne Marie?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to chime in on that, I was looking at the meat section as well. And if you think about that online order, right, it's the image has to offset what you see in the store, but the description has to always be really good as well. And I was looking for a good website description, and I clicked on a ribeye steak, and under description it said steak. Like, that's profound, people. And it took me a lot of retailers to find somebody that actually talked about the great eating experience, bringing the steakhouse home, and I think that's what we need to do, right, in order to really inspire people. But anyways, that's a different story. All right, let's talk a little bit about convenience. We've brought it up a whole number of times, and we brought it up for a reason. Because value added did extremely well on the veg side in 2020. Fruit, on the other hand, not so much. Why is that? Value added vegetables tend to really be about cooking convenience, saving time, whereas a lot of the cut fruit tends to be about entertaining, on the go, and what have you. So as life has resumed, as we mentioned a few times, we see really a big growth in that value added. How often do you purchase it? Fruit side, but continued growth in vegetables as well. We're all tired of the number of meals we're cooking today versus what we used to do. And that tired is not just preparation, by the way. That is tired of planning what we're going to have every single day, every single meal, tired of shopping and actually getting the items, tired of preparation and cleanup. So all those areas matter in value added. If we look at the actual numbers, there we go. It had a very big year. Again, as we're looking for pockets of growth for 2022, I absolutely believe anything that drives convenience is going to be an area that we're going to continue to see growth. It reached more than $10 billion in 21, and that was up tremendously over a year ago in both dollars and volume. And that volume piece is especially important if you think about the fact that overall we lost volume, but both organic and value added are areas that still saw volume growth. So this is a big area. Now, what would prompt you to purchase more of it? Well, better prices. Here we go again. If we get past our price, then we're looking at, well, if it were to last longer. And that is a big one for consumers. We all know that when you cut something up, it doesn't tend to last as long. So that means we've got to be even better on our fresh execution, even better on how do you store it, etc. A greater assortment, especially those who already buy a lot, they want to see more of it and get even more convenience into their home, and also some insight into when and where it was prepared. When is way more important than where, and I see this in meat, I see it in produce as well. So really talking about that freshness aspect of it is very important. Oh, there goes my clicker again. There we go. It's all you, Rick.
So Jim, in addition to offering value-added products, how else can you create convenience for your consumers in the produce aisle?
I think the biggest thing is how do we make it more convenient for members, customers to get produce? And so we've already talked about click and pull. Put the order in. I can pull up outside. They bring it up and load it in the car. That's one. Delivery to home. We've got, of our 600 buildings, 400 now that deliver to home direct, and so that's making produce more accessible, more convenient. And then even the folks that are in the club, we rolled out Scan and Go a few years ago now, where a member walks around with their phone and they're scanning the items they want to pick up, produce, whatever, and they skip the line to head out. The only interaction you have with the person is at the exit door, and they scan your phone and a couple items. And I think time-starved, convenient, and so getting to the member how they want to be reached, whether it's at home or just a convenient in-club shopping trip, that's what we have to do, make it more convenient.
Robbie, in the purchase decision section of the report, we heard from the consumers about in-store signage. And I'd be curious, if you take growth categories like snack cups and salads, do you do anything to communicate, how do you try to communicate that to the consumer?
Yeah, I think as we continue to communicate and engage the guest, we have to make sure it's personalized, and how do we continue to find that innovation for that newness. And so I think, I'm a merchandiser at heart still. I think merchandising matters, and how you put those highly impulsive items up front so that you're getting that guest to be able to walk into your department, and then they're gonna fill up the rest of the basket once they're in there. But it really is going to be continuing to drive that innovation where they're getting inspired. And it could inspire them to be able to cook something else that they have with the meal there, or it's inspiring about a lot what we've been talking about on just that healthy snacking and convenience, and giving them the option that you could either pick up these items for your at home or for on the go. And so I think as an industry, we got to continue to innovate and just not rest on our laurels.
Jerry, we talked about one of the opportunities to improve consumption is an emphasis on breakfast, lunch, and snacking. How do you think value added is going to play into those 3 meal occasions? And if so, can the growers and shippers help you with that?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. It is. It is playing it, right? So because people are time starved and they want that quick solution. So growers and shippers, here's what I'd tell you. You have to emphasize flavor. You can't cut a green cantaloupe and expect the customers to eat it no matter what, right? It's got to be flavor first. I think you got to consider the value equation always. Is it worth it? Is what you're putting together going to be worth it? Will the consumer pick it up? We have to have shelf life, otherwise we can't sell it. So that's a little bit of the challenge. I think it also has to be refrigerator friendly. Can I stack it in the refrigerator? Can I actually see the product in the refrigerator so that the customers are grabbing it out of there? And then you got to have an environmentally friendly packaging. But here's the other thing I tell you is don't go this alone. You've got great retailers, and if you're going down that road developing something, I'd love to have the conversation with you ahead of time so you don't go down that road and develop something that we're not going to buy anyways. So I think use us as partners. I think we're all willing to be partners and let us help you develop. Because if we develop the right item, we're all going to be successful.
When I think of value added, I think it's just like organic. You pay a premium for value added produce, Do you think the customer's willingness to pay for someone else to do the work for them is going to continue, or you think that's going to start to recede? Any thoughts on that?
If it's something that really helps them, like pineapple's difficult to do, so at home. So buying a cord pineapple, that's time saving. That might be worth it. But I don't know. Maybe cutting up apples. Maybe we can do that at home. Maybe that doesn't need to be at the club. But
I think so. Time is money, right? And so if it's meeting their need, they're willing to do whatever it takes. And if that gives them more time to spend with their family or more time to spend with their kids, then I think the guest is willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think if it doesn't grow, it's going to be because we don't have store labor or we don't have labor out in the facilities, right? Or we get the convenience and the price gap wrong. And that's when we'll stop growing it.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I agree. And what I'm seeing lately quite a bit actually is people putting all the value-added items together, the value-added meat, the value-added veg, and decide with signage saying this is still a whole lot cheaper than eating out. So it's that idea of buying time while still having a great meal that costs you less than it would in the restaurant.
To your point, Anne-Marie, IRI did a study where last year, despite all the inflation, the average consumer spent less on food than they did pre-pandemic. And the biggest influence was we're not eating out as much. And the cost of eating food out is so expensive that you're actually spending less on food than you were before the pandemic. And I think that's really interesting.
Absolutely. So our last topic, and while we go through it, start getting your questions ready because we'll have some time from Q&A. Our last topic is transparency and sustainability. Rick, you talked a little bit about the food waste, but this is really an area that gets Gen Z and millennials very excited. They want to know where their food comes from. They don't want to waste a whole lot. They want to take care of the planet. So we're seeing a lot of people say, yeah, I think knowing the country that it was grown in, knowing where exactly or who grew it is important. I want to know how far it traveled from the growing field to the store. These, again, are not huge percentages, but I don't think we live in a market where we have any like easy silver bullets left, right? I think finding growth is going to be a lot about finding these little things that excites some part of the shopper group. And clearly all things sustainability is something that really is important to our younger shoppers who are ones that are not spending as much in their store today as the boomers and Gen Xers. So we see a lot of great examples of brands starting to communicate better on their packaging. So this, for instance, this basil packages talked about that it's sustainably grown. It's grown in New England. It's pesticide free. It's long-lasting freshness and exactly how it was grown. A lot of those have QR codes on their package where you can go and actually see the greenhouse, take a virtual tour, and all of these things are not seeing huge take-up. But in my mind, my little saying is always transparency is the currency of trust. If we give people the ability to look at where it comes from, not a ton of people are going to take you up on it, but it is something that they feel you've opened up their eyes and they're able to look for it and therefore they appreciate it whether they actually do or not. So somebody made a comment earlier, let's use our packaging better. I think these are some great examples there. We see actually some really, really good examples coming out of the retailers, especially in Europe and Canada, that are growing in store. They're really using that in-store growing as an opportunity to educate consumers about the lack of using pesticides, no transportation, et cetera. Now, it's not realistic that that would ever be a large percentage. So at the same time, though, let this be a challenge for all of you growing anywhere in the world or in the US to say, how do we bring this story to life? How do we give people permissibility and favorability to buy our products? Because at-home waste absolutely is a concern. Rick, you talked about it earlier. There's quite a few people, 50% of people who say, yes, the amount of fruit and veggies that I toss out at home is a concern. And then a little bit fewer talk about the fact that they have to toss out a lot of packaging as well. If you look at some of the European countries, France, Carrefour made an announcement that they're going to remove packages for more than 200 fruit and veg items. But then the controversy in that is that a lot of people look to packaging in fresh produce during the pandemic because they feel it protects the fruit and veg a little bit better. We also need to talk about that oftentimes the packaging is there for functional reasons, because it tends to extend shelf life. So we got a lot to talk about on our packages, that's for sure. But when we look at the trends in the United States, we've seen that across all fruits and vegetables, including most of the commodities I tend to look at, we see that fixed weight is really the one driving growth, not just in the pandemic years, far before the pandemic as well. In fact, you see that this year, the bulk displays actually lost in dollar sales, and it was really all the growth was driven by fixed weight, and it's also the majority of the share. So packaging is important, and that also, of course, helps with things like self-checkout, online ordering, because it comes a little bit easier to communicate to people how much they're buying and to check themselves out as well. But consumers recognize that packaging has a functional idea behind it as well, if you think about the cucumbers, et cetera. But at the same time, they really challenge our industry to say it can't all be about function. We really have to keep that environmental piece in mind as well. In fact, if you just look at the number of people who say only functionality matters, that's only 37%. So it's really a mix of people who believe that there has got to be the golden middle, as we call it, of balancing functionality with the environmental impact of packaging. Here you see some retailers and some brands get into that with things like trays that are more environmentally friendly packaging, encouraging people to bring their own little produce nets to the store, and just educating people about the amount of food waste that was Safeway in Canada. A lot of programs in France here, some examples. It's a whole program where instead of the produce manager going around with his cart and taking items out, taking it to the back room, those items actually go into these boxes, the zéro gaspille, that means no waste at all. So people buy that, and every box is different because they just take the items that are a little bit too ripe or just don't look good anymore in the regular displays and put some in boxes like that. It's been a very successful program for that. And of course, many innovations in food waste. We've seen, and some very innovative things as well. Like I love the little avocado that talks about, hey, sometimes you don't need the big one and a little one is great. That can be another way to talk about food waste, right? Is the smaller portions. Of course, all those ugly fruit type of programs. So there's many ways. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a marketing swing if you think about it. So Rick, I think the next is yours. It's not clicking for me, so take it away.
All right. Hey, Jim, I'm going to start with you. I thought your comment earlier is you got to know your customer. Are they value conscious? Are they, convenience conscious? And you're a club store. So when you think of food waste, how does Sam's Club approach that? Do you try to approach it, or do you see your customer that's not?
No, we do, and it's the world. It's definitely the world I live in, and there is such a thing as a pack size penalty. Like if you make the pack too big, and the members throwing, even if they throw away the final quarter of it or whatever. I mean, no one likes to throw away food that they've paid for. So, I mean, there are a couple of things that we do. I mean, the first is we got to make sure the pack size is right. I know how often my members, the average member, comes back to shop. It's probably not as frequent as what these guys see, and so I got to make sure that my pack size is right based on that. I also have to make sure what I'm buying and what is arriving at the club is fresh. Like I have to monitor how fresh is the product that we're getting because I know it's got to last a little bit longer in my member's kitchen than it would if I was at somewhere else. So.
Right. Robbie, we know that consumers have this sustainability conscience. If I walked into a Target, how would I know that Target's committed to sustainability issues holistically, whether it's people, planet, health, and so on? And do your suppliers help you, or could your suppliers help you in that communication?
Yeah, sustainability is a tough one. As you think about where we're at now, we recently put out a goal that 100% of our own brands will be circular by 2040. That's a lofty goal, right? And then by 2025, 100% of our own brand plastics will either be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And so, Jerry touched on it earlier, we really have to work together for us to be able to get to those goals. That doesn't happen overnight, we all know that, right? So if our goal is to have all of our plastic and own brands by 2025, that's something that we're already working on now to be able to make that come to life. And so as you think about your partnerships with retailers, we have to be able to have that level of transparency to make sure that we're both working together to be able to reach those goals. And I know a lot of times that you're bringing in new machinery, or you think we have this updated packaging coming in, but if it doesn't work for the retailer, then we're not going to be able to bring it in. So finding that level of transparency where we can work together, I think is what's going to make us both win in the future.
Jerry, growing information is of great interest to shoppers, particularly the millennials. How do you provide information to shoppers, and how could the growers shippers help you with that?
I'm going to go back to my kindergarten days, what I learned, right? And do a little bit of show and tell, but this package, the berry, right? The berry that cares, offshore berry. It's got a little QR code in there, and I'm surprised at how many packages don't today, by the way. So you pull up that QR code, and it's got great information about the grower. You could put anything in there. It could be a sustainability message, right? So that's kind of one example. And then I pulled this from Shaw's this week, who so happened to where I was. and it's about Sumo citrus, right? That beautiful piece of fruit, and in our ad is a QR code that points you to Sumo. And what's that all about? I mean, do I really, is this really a good piece of fruit? By the way, it is. It eats like candy, and that tells the story. So whether it's packaging, whether it's marketing, I think we continue to want to go back to the grower. There's a story to be told there, and it fulfills a lot of different things. It fulfills local that we've talked about today, right? Mm-hmm. It fulfills information that folks want to know. It gives you confidence. I take these tours out to, we call them innovation trips, and you go to the growing areas, and it's amazing at how much these growers put into product and how much care they put into them, just so we can beat the crap out of it at the store, right? I mean, it's just, and I'd love to have the customer understand that, what went into a banana, right? What went into a banana, and don't mistreat it, so.
Anne-Marie brought up that Carrefour in France is going to try and eliminate packaging. And we know that there's this big push between functionality and environmentally friendly. And packaging is clearly in the bullseye of the consumer and the retailers. I'd be interested to hear what your approach has been on the packaging.
Well, we put it in writing, just like Target.
Yeah.
Actually, we're going to do it a month before Target. Just so everybody knows, we're a month ahead of Robbie.
Resetting goals as of today.
Yeah, we did. First, you got to lay a goal out there, and that is a lofty goal. And I'm just like you. I'm getting challenged every day. Hey, by the way, Jerry, do you remember that goal? So I think you got to put it out there, and we'll get there. It's tricky, but we'll get it. We'll get there.
Robbie?
Yeah, I was going back to Jerry.
Are you changing your timeline now?
Maybe my timeline's 2024 by December, just to make sure
Yeah.
I get ahead of Jerry on. I think we gotta be careful on how we present this to the guests, right? Because if it puts them at an inconvenience, then they're not going to buy it at all, and then we're going to continue to have waste. But we've been doing a lot of guest insight and asking them what are they looking for and how can we meet their needs. And I think as we look at our guest insight and as grower shippers out there, as you guys see with your guest insight, I think again it's that transparency of what items do we want to tackle. We can't tackle the entire portfolio right away, but let's start just taking things off here and there so that we can make sure that we're going to hit the goals.
Yeah. Have the suppliers been helpful, or is the innovation coming?
Suppliers have been helpful. I mean, they're working on this. They've got the same. They've got goals. We've all got the same kind of goal with sustainability. Timing might be off just a little bit, but it's a big deal. And I think looking outside of the U.S., where they're already making progress on some of these things, is important. But Robbie's got it right. We got to bring the customer along with us, because the goal is still to increase consumption of produce.
Yeah, you can't lose functionality. Product safety is always paramount. And, all three of your organizations helped FMI put together a packaging playbook. And we have that on our website available as well. So, thanks to your organizations for being part of that task force. Well, with that,
we're at the last slide. So as I mentioned early on, this is the tip of the iceberg as it relates to all the information that is available. And FMI always makes the report available at a big discount of 40%. You see the code that you'll need for the store. Rick and I always love hearing from the industry. I always say this research has to be by the industry for the industry. So the more people call me, email me, show me your pictures, the better this will be. So be sure to do that. And I think, Kristen, we have a few minutes, about 5 minutes for Q&A. So if anybody wants to hop up and ask a question, now's the time.
We have mics, 3 stands right here, so if you want to make your way there. I'll go.
Oh, that's what she is.
Yeah, go.
All right.
there you go, right over there.
We talked about value added in organic and value added in cut fruit and veg. When will home delivery and shopping services be considered in home delivery? Because if you go to the last mile guys, they all talk, there's no free delivery, and there's, remember when you got paid for packing and shipping, and, there's a cost to that. We kind of did it retail and restaurant because we had to for 2 years. And we have a lot of these companies that are based on valuation and funding round and not profit and loss. And, at some point, they got to get in the process. So, do you guys see, where do you guys, at what point does it go from a free thing to a paid thing, to a value added?
Great question. I'm not sure if I have a short answer for you or a date, but is a question around when does it become free or when do we charge for it? Yeah. I don't know if there's a time that we start. Right now it's a service that we provide to our guest, right? And in many cases there's an extra cost in the cost of goods. So you could say that we are charging for it today. We've got some subscription services that we launched that actually it's a value add, and it comes with a lot more than just free delivery. So in a roundabout way, we are charging, but it's probably more on the realm of like a Costco or a Sam's Club, where it's, you join, right? And then you get a whole bunch of things along with that. At the end of the day, it ends up being a better value if you put the math to it.
Over here.
No, I think it's actually a point of differentiation, really, and you're just providing value to the guest. And so you start to develop what that loyalty looks like, and again, just listening to what they want. Do they want to be able to have a drive-up, pickup, or to get it delivered? But we just got to continue to have the guest ear on that.
And it's a race. We're all trying to get there the fastest.
Joe Feldman with Awesome Organics. I have a question for the panel. Something our company is very passionate about, and that's fair trade. So regardless if there's marketing equity in it, we are going to continue to do it, but just wanted to know how the panelists looked fair trade when it comes to their shoppers.
I'll go. Why not? I think fair trade is a value, but we also have a certain, process that all of our growers have to go through. And fair trade is about treating the growers right? Whatever they're growing, whether they're growing flowers or they're growing produce, and we have processes in place to check that. So is it fair trade or what we're doing today? I think we're just trying to balance that.
I think there's an education piece to it, and helping the guests understand what fair trade is and what does it stand for. I think the guest understands and knows that it's something good, but they couldn't give you specific attributes about what it does. And so if we help the guests understand what those attributes are, then I think they're going to be more willing to support it.
But the principles behind fair trade, I think everyone supports that. We want to treat workers well. We want to provide. It's important. We need people to show up to harvest.
If you ask the customer what it is, they won't be able to tell you. Now we all know, but so that's the challenge. Is it a value?
Thank you.
All right, we'll swing back
Hi,
over there.
Doug Rano, president of Fresh Results. Thank you guys very much for an excellent panel today. My question is around proprietary varieties and the investment that's been made in proprietary varieties over the past 15, 20 years. And these varieties cost a lot more to create and to make. They taste better, they ship better, they last a lot longer. What are some things the panel could suggest on ways companies that have made that investment can help get that transitioned into the buying pool from not just a cost perspective, but a value perspective, how shelf life lasts longer, how shrink goes down. And it's in an environment when buyers have less and less time. There just isn't a lot of time. And so it's a longer conversation. So I would love to hear some feedback from the panel on how to get into buyers about some of this amazing work that's been done over the last 10 to 15 years.
I can take that one if you want. Yeah. I think the eating experience is what's going to shape us on where we go in the future. And my team would tell you all the time, and all the vendors that I talk to you guys, it's about the best at-home eating experience. And so the guest is willing to pay for a really good eating experience. But I think what ends up happening is if you're off and on from these eating experiences, then it's not consistent. And so If you're determining that we really want to have this best at-home eating experience and have the best varieties that are out there, we have to be consistent on delivering that to the guest day in and day out. And I think as we work together as retailers versus growers and suppliers, there is a cost on getting rid of some of those old varieties, but it's a step that we need to take together, because you can't have 50 varieties out there and expect the retailers to be able to bring it in. And it starts to muddy the water a little bit on what that experience is supposed to be like for the guest.
Yeah, and you mentioned consistency, right? So, we'll go down the road of an unbelievable tomato, and just the guests are just as happy as they can be, right? They buy it, and then one day, the crop wasn't quite what it is, but maybe we shipped it anyhow, and it didn't have the flavor we thought, and nobody wants to throw produce away, and we disappoint the guests. So it has to be consistency, and I think you have to build your program. And I think about, I'm just going to say it. I think about the Grapery and the work that they've done over the years, and how they've stayed with their program and basically earned you earn the right to sell it, right? And it never disappoints, and they've done a good job of telling their story. So I think you got to build that rapport, because you spent a lot of money on it. You got to protect it, and then just don't disappoint.
Yeah, and align with the retailer who has the members, customers that want that also. I mean, there are people who will pay more for quality, and if you can deliver it, they'll do it.
All right, I know there were a couple more questions, and we're absolutely willing to take those as you come up afterwards, but I think, Kristen, we're unfortunately out of time, correct?
I just want to be respectful for everybody who has the women's luncheon in a half hour and make sure we get that break. But our panelists, Rick and Anna Marie, will be hanging around here for just a few minutes. So if you want to, feel free to come up and ask them any questions. So let's give our panelists, Rick and Anna Marie, a big round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and have a great rest of your day.